Hi everyone, welcome back. Okay, I am filming this on Tuesday, July 30th, and I'm a bit more on I was planning on wearing my Olympic shirt in the first place, but I'm adding my little USA stars because if you missed it, the women's gymnastics team and Simone Biles just kind of knocked it out of the frickin' park. And we watched it live, my mom and I, and we were screaming and we were crying, and it was USA! USA. Anyway, on to the video. Today, we will talk about the second woman to win an Olympic gold medal. We are going from the water to the tennis court, when men ruled the sport and women played in total dresses. Charlotte Cooper. Let's get started. USA! USA! Charlotte Reinagle Cooper was born on September 22nd, 1870 in Ingle, Middlesex, England. Nicknamed Chatty, she was the youngest daughter to parents Henry Cooper, who was a miller, and Teresa Georgina Miller. She was first introduced to tennis at her local tennis club at the Ealing Long Tennis Club, still open today. Her first coach was H. Lawrence for the first few years until she switched to Charles Martin and very famous Scottish-Irish player Harold Mahony. He worked with Charlotte not only on her physical fitness, but her mental fitness. Unlike today, tennis wasn't played during the winter, so to keep herself fit during the off-season, she would run, walk, and play hockey. Now, before we move on, let's talk a little about the history of tennis and women's role in it, and women's attire in tennis, because this fascinated me, because when I looked her up and I saw her in a dress, I needed to know more. It's just how my brain works. The tennis we know today began in the mid-19th century in Britain and was called lawn tennis. Tennis was very popular with women from the beginning, dating all the way back to the 1870s. Women played in mixed doubles. However, unlike the men's clothes, the women's clothes in tennis was cumbersome, to say the least. Taking inspiration from cricket attire, tennis players were required to wear all white, but in 1884, Maud Wilson won the first Wimbledon ladies singles championship wearing an ankle-length all-white corset dress, and it's 6 years after that that the championships mandated all-white attire, which is what we see today. By 1887, 15-year-old Charlotte Dodd wore an outfit that not only looked like a school uniform, but had no multi-layered full-length skirts, and most notably, thank godly, no corset. Again, thank God. You want me to play tennis in a corset? No. However, her older opponent, who lost to her, complained about the fairness of her clothing, debating that since she was free from the restraining corset, which was the standard clothing back then, that was unfair and gave her an advantage because, she was able to move around and breathe, catch her breath. No corset. Yeah, she kind of had the advantage. See, the upper middle class's standards was way more about appearance and style than comfort and flexibility. So in the early 1900s, women played tennis, want to make that very clear, in high-collared dress, floor-length skirts with stockings and long-sleeved tops, which of course made moving around a little bit difficult. You would too if you had to wear, and also may I say, did a little bit more deep dive about that. The collars that the women wore were basically like a cardboard box. Cardboard box around your throat in a corset, in skirt, long sleeve, playing tennis. No. It wasn't until the 1920s that skirts began getting shorter, shirts were getting looser, and shoes got flatter, because they played tennis in heels. Kitten heels, kind of, but still. In 1893, Charlotte won her first senior singles title in Ilkley in West Yorkshire. She later described this first win in a book, quote, Winning my first championship of the Ealing Long Tennis Club at the age of 14 was a very important moment in my life. How well I remember, beckoned by my proud mother in my best clothes, running off to the club on the Saturday afternoon to play in the final without a vestige of nerve. Would that I had none now. And winning. That was the first really important match of my life. End quote. Obviously, this win gave her her first taste of victory, and she wanted to go bigger. So she went to the grandest stage in tennis during this time, Wimbledon, and is still the grandest stage today. She traveled between Ealing and the All English Club, which is where Wimbledon is, on a bike in a way too long dress with one of her two wooden rackets strapped to the bracket in the front of her bike. Now, I said that Charlotte had two rackets. That's because one of her rackets was old. She used that one for playing in the rain. But when it was sunny and dry, she would use her better one for those matches. She won her first Wimbledon title in 1895. That next year, in 1896, she won again. And in 1898, she won again. Going back to 1896, when Charlotte was 26, she became completely deaf. I couldn't find how this happened, but I would think she became deaf from an illness. But don't take my word for it. Knowing this, how awesome is this? From this point on, keep in mind, she's still doing tennis with balls whizzing by her head, the smacking of rackets, knowing where her opponent is, all the things that hearing would be a good thing to have. Practicing, competing, winning all these matches. She's doing all that. Tennis, completely deaf. Eat your heart out. With her coaches working on her mental fitness as well as her physical fitness, Charlotte was steady, composed, and consistent on the court. Charlotte was slim, active, and always ready to attack. She went to the net at every opportunity. When she won her first Wimbledon title, she did a rare move at the time, and still rarely seen today, she attacked the net. This means she did a backhand low hit of the ball, leaving her opponent with no angle to work with. Again, you see this in today's age. Again, watch the Olympics. You might see a couple of these things, but this is a very thing to do because you're already close to the net, and if somebody hits it and then goes over you, you're kind of screwed. This move was quickly growing in women's tennis at this time. Though Charlotte was aggressive, she was equal-tempered. With that, her great technical and amazing stroke and hella good volley skills, if I do say so myself, she dominated the court. She was also just one of very few women that served overhand, which until the early 1900s, women mostly served underhand. On top of her singles titles, she also won 5 all-English mixed double titles between 1894 and 1898 with Harold Mahony. In 1895 and 1898, she won the very prestigious Irish Long Tennis Championships. She also did matches in Germany. She was second on the then Ladies' Championship of Germany in 1897. Though she was runner-up, she made a huge impression in Germany. In the Lawn Tennis Journal, a reporter said that Charlotte, quote, captivated the lawn tennis world in Hamburg by her style of play. An occasional volley from middle court the German ladies will venture on. But to see a lady go up to the net volleying and smacking balls has not fallen to the lot of players in the fatherland before. Certainly, no better lawn tennis has ever before been witnessed in Germany. End quote. She would return to that competition and won, beating the top German female player at the time. In 1899, she won the singles title at the Scottish Championships, and that next year, Charlotte was one of the 22 women to compete in the 1900 Summer Olympic Games in Paris. As I said last week, this was the first games to have women players, and they could compete in just 5 sports out of the 19 at the games. Tennis was played from July 6th to 11th, and 26 players from 4 nations competed. Interestingly, where the tournament would be played, the venue, kind of an important thing to have, wasn't even known till 5 days before the event started. Thankfully, the 10...
10 cours l'île de Puteaux.
What?
Dicourt, l'île de Puteaux.
That place was chosen to be the venue. I am not saying that. Charlotte played in both the singles and mixed doubles at the games. She was paired with Reginald Doherty, and they dominated the games. On July 11th, 1900, they would go on to beat Harold Mahony and Hélène Prévost. Harold, you might remember, was an old coach of Charlotte's, and Hélène was a very famous French player who won the 1900 French Women's Singles Championship. They beat them in straight sets, 6-2 and 6-4. Later that day, Charlotte would compete with Hélène again, this time in the women's singles. And when everything was said and done, Charlotte would win gold again in straight sets, 6-1 and 6-4, thus making her the first woman to win Olympic gold in tennis. Boom. After the games on January 12, 1901, she married Alfred Herstory, who was a solicitor and later became president of the Lawn Tennis Association. That same year, she won once again the singles title at the German Championships, and that next year, she won the Swiss Championships. For the next 5 years, she continued to compete in championships, and during those years, she and Alfred had 2 children. Rex Sterry, born in 1903, who became vice chairman of the All-English Club for 15 years, and Gwendolyn, or Gwen, Reinagel Sterry in 1905, who followed in her mom's footsteps and became a tennis player. She went on to participate in Wimbledon and played on the British team at the Wimbledon Cup, and would later marry Scottish rugby player Max Simmer, who competed in 28 games for the Scottish rugby team. After the Olympics, Charlotte continued to compete in and win matches all over Europe, including the London Championships, where she won 5 times, the Northumberland County Championships, where she won 3 times, and Middlesex, where she won 7 times, basically in a row. She had 1 year where she lost, but still, she basically won them in a row. In 1907, Charlotte did something that even she says is her greatest accomplishment, and I think is pretty badass. At the time, 20-year-old American tennis player May Sutton was considered one of the top tennis players in America of all time. They competed against one another at the Northern Lawn Tennis Championships, later called the Manchester Open in Liverpool. When this match ensued, May was, for the most part, undefeated. She was young, quick, and very talented. But the veteran, 37 years young Charlotte beat the 20-year-old May at this tournament in straight sets. 7-5, 6-0. Take that, Pipsqueak. This defeat was one of the handfuls of defeats May had in her entire career, and her second defeat in a row at this tournament. Charlotte later commented on this win, quote, "I have memories. I had heard a great deal about Miss May Sutton, beating everybody without the loss of a set. I had also heard she was a giant of strength and that the harder one hit, the more she liked it. I was determined to introduce unfamiliar tactics, giving her short balls in order to entice her up to the net. The result was that many of her terrific drives went out. I recollect her telling me after the match was over that my game was very different to any other she had ever played, and that she was not anxious to meet me again." Remarks I took as a great compliment, end quote. She took her to school. And that student went, I don't want her class again. Charlotte won another Wimbledon Women's Singles Championship in 1901, but lost in 1902 and 1904. However, when she won in 1908, she was 37. That made her A, the second of one of only 4 women to have won Wimbledon titles after becoming a mother, and B, the oldest female tennis player to win a Wimbledon title at the age of 37. And to this day, Charlotte remains the oldest Wimbledon's single ladies champion in Herstory. We're just doing all the air horns in this one, man, because she's just flipping awesome. Charlotte continued to play and compete in tennis well into her 40s, competing in a total of 24 Wimbledon tournaments, reaching the finals in 1912, but lost to Ethel Larkham. Despite the loss, she competed in this match at the age of 40-2. That next year, in 1913, at the age of 40-3, she, along with Dorothea Lambert Chambers, competed in the first ever Wimbledon doubles ladies tournament. Though they lost, that was the first of 100 women's double tournaments since then. Her final match at Wimbledon was in 1919, though she lost in the third round of qualifying matches. The point is, she got that far at the age of 40-9. And just to remind you, she's deaf. Oh, and she's still riding her freaking bike with her 2 rackets. Plus, I forgot to tell you this, those 2 rackets were the only rackets she ever played with. She's done all this stuff. Paris, Wimbledon, over and over and over again, Switzerland, Germany, Ireland, wherever, Sweden, wherever. She's doing all these games with 2 rackets. I'm so sorry. I don't know if that's true or not, but everybody said that she only had 2 rackets and those were the only 2 rackets she ever had in her life. And she's still riding her bike at the age of 50. Now you would think she would retire at this point, right? I mean, she's flipping 50 by now. You're funny. Though she didn't compete in Wimbledon again, she kept on competing into the 1920s and 30s, playing her last tournament when she was in her early 60s and her eyesight was failing. She's playing tennis, deaf, and now kind of blind. I cannot. More air horns, please. Though she didn't compete, she still attended as many Wimbledon matches as she could and became very well known there. She would clap, cheer, shout during every match. Everybody loved her, nobody could shut her up, and everyone knew her. In 1961, she flew from her new home in Scotland to see the 75th Wimbledon final and to attend the luncheon. She's 90, by the way, at this point, but she just couldn't stop. You could not keep her away from the court, and her love and passion for the sport was very well known by those all around her till her death. Charlotte Reinagel Cooper Sterry died on October 10th, 1966 in her home in Helensburgh, Scotland at the age of 96. Even in her final days, she was alert, funny, bouncing off the walls, and happy. And I'm sure still riding her flippin' bike. Now, I have no idea if this is true, but I saw it enough times in my research that I need to mention it. And if somebody knows this, please confirm if this is true or not, because I kind of can and kind of can't believe it. After she died, her son Rex couldn't find her Wimbledon trophies nor her freaking Olympic medal anywhere. That's a bit weird. However, Rex thinks that his mother gave these pivotal, important, insanely contributing amounts to history of just overall importance in her career to her freaking gardener. Why did she do that? I don't know. Again, I couldn't find if this was even true or not. She might have given, I don't know if there was money involved, but I don't think that there was, her Wimbledon titles. Gold medal in the first Olympics in women's history as the first woman to win in both singles and doubles in tennis to a flippin' gardener. And apparently Rex said that this was in his mother's nature. We may never find those things. If somebody knows if that is true or not, please let me know in the comments. We need to find these things and give them to someplace other than a gardener's junk drawer. Charlotte is a legend in tennis. In 2013, Charlotte was inducted into the International Tennis Hall of Fame with 5 Wimbledon titles and having been in 8 consecutive finals and being the oldest champion in Herstory. She held this record for 90 years, being surpassed by Martina Navratilova in 1990 when she competed in her 9th consecutive singles final. Charlotte shaped the modern tennis game for women along with so many others, paving the way for thousands of women to play tennis in Wimbledon singles and doubles. Not to mention one of her biggest accomplishments being the first woman to compete in tennis at the 1900s Olympics and the first woman to win gold twice at said Olympics, paves the way for all the women that have competed in tennis at the Olympics since. Oh, and by the way, remember, by the point Olympics happened, she was already deaf. 1826, deaf. Olympics, 1900s, she's deaf. So also technically, she's the first woman to compete and win gold in the Olympics before the Paralympics even existed. It was founded in 1948 and the first official Paralympics was in 1960. This woman is the OG of the OGs. Charlotte may not be a household name, probably because she sold all of her stuff to a freaking gardener. But for those who are well versed in the history of tennis, I really hope she is, because of the 184 athletes competing in tennis vying for gold at the Paris Olympics, 87 are women, and they have the legend of Charlotte Cooper to thank for achieving the first gold in both doubles and singles. There you go. The story of the second ever woman to win gold at the Olympics. And you see how I did that there? Last week, Helen won in May and she wins in July. May, June, July. Oh, and before I go, quick correction from my last video. I learned during the opening ceremony, which wasn't that freaking cool. I loved the opening ceremony. Yes, I was confused a good 60% of the time, but still though, that was the most unique opening ceremony on the planet. I learned that Paris has hosted the games 3 times, not 2 like I said last week. 1900, 1924, and 2024. But this is still awesome because these games are the first time Paris has hosted the games in 100 years. Still freaking cool games, I'm just saying, going on right now. Anyway, I hope you learned something awesome about Charlotte Cooper. And what the heck? She's deaf, playing tennis, wins Olympic gold, wins Wimbledon, keeps going until she's 60 and kind of blind, so then she decides to stop. Keeps going to matches because she just loves the game and is bouncing off the walls and then decides to die. What a freaking life! If you learned something today, and I sure hope you did, please like, share, subscribe to this channel, and while you're down there, please leave a friendly comment. I will be back next week with my 3rd and final Paris video. This one is really interesting. It's very interesting and also really cool. But until then, don't be well behaved. You just might make herstory. See you next time, guys. Keep enjoying the Olympics. USA's mobiles, yes!